there is a place on this planet that's existence was merely thought legend, a myth of the sea dogs. A place that is surrounded by huge stone men, watching you, gazing upon you through the mist from the shore, lost in the vast deep oceans as if forgotten by the earth. Throughout its long history, this mystical rock gave sanctuary to countless perishing souls, an island channeled with the sighted hope of the desolate. Lost at the mercy of the unforgiving deep, this land will have brought many the marooned great elation. Well beyond 1,000 miles from its neighbor Chile, these marooned souls were rescued by a nirvana, or plunged into a living hell, dependent upon their fated arrival time in history. The entire world could pass this place by, without ever knowing of its existence. An isolated culture is an understatement, with encouraged healthy doses of dicing with death, racing across shark-infested lagoons for fun and celebrity status. A family of tribes who called this place home. Furthermore, apart from the stars, these paradisiacal familiar lagoons were their own world. Generation after generation, the descendants of the rescued, the lucky and the brave, lived out their entire life, isolated in paradise, and for over a millennia, no one could tell them they were wrong. The extremely rare past events of the extremely fortunate, wrecking upon the island, would have been an experience these stone figures would know too well. I'm sure the stories they could tell would be beyond magnificent. The scarce event of shipwrecked survivors coming ashore among the army of stone men would have been a life-changing event for the natives on this other world within hours. According to early missionary reports, there was a complex and well-functioning social structure on the island, one king in control of 9 clans, each with their own respected chiefs. The islanders were mixed race, obviously a product of the unpredictable nature of the luck of the tides. No one came to this place by anything but a lucky escape from an accident. A Chile and Madagascar, survivors from all over the globe who somehow made it to the island, raised families and lived out their lives in complete isolation, never again seeing their homelands, or indeed anything they knew before. Landing on Easter Island was being reborn. The island was once heavily forested with broadleaf palms, and most of the land was farmed. Strong evidence suggests they farmed sweet potatoes, a very important item that would have likely come to the island with the drift mariners from South America. These potatoes would have been an exceptionally welcome addition upon their arrival into their world. Famines have previously occurred on the island. These were reported by island survivors, and with nowhere to escape, these were obviously very harsh starvation events indeed, inevitably leading to cannibalism on the island. Over 4 major population crashes and famines were reported by the original natives in their knowledge of the island's past. With no outside influences, invasions or even contact ever experienced by the Easter Islanders, any other colonies were slowly forgotten of. The only incoming information would be from the very rare shipwrecks. Maybe many generations would pass without the shipwrecking event occurring. Language barriers would have also been an issue. Some likely believed no one else existed but the Easters. The king on the island lived a life of godliness. And with life on a tiny island with such a king, games and pastimes involving horrendous deaths were inevitably invented and participated in by all. The most long-lived of all these games, and the one in which I personally suspect may have caused the most harm to the population and island itself, was known as the Tangata Manu, or the Bird Man. At the start of every sea-bird mating season, specifically the sooty tern, which is a breeding colony on a small rock called Motunui, a distance of about 2,000 meters from the island, a competition was held. Each of the tribes would put forward a member to compete. The race would start on the coast of Easter Island, where they would swim out a considerable distance to Motunui. What made this game interesting, however, was the fact that the water surrounding Easter Island was shark-infested, with numerous resident sharks apparently gaining a taste for the natives over the years. No doubt these hungry man-eaters would have been encouraged by fish blood dumped into the swim. If the participant was quick and lucky enough to survive the outgoing journey, they would then be tasked with finding the first laid fragile, sooty tern egg laid that season. The entire world's population, as far as they were concerned, were watching and betting on the unraveling events from across the tropical waves. Watching the events unfold through the keen eye of spotters perched atop the windy cliffs. Once a participant had found their target egg, their task became even more challenging. They must then traverse the ocean's wash again, without again being eaten, and return first with an egg intact to Easter, to be declared the Bird Man. The Bird Man would then have full control over the island's resources until next season. I suspect this tit-for-tat game would have created competition and resentment amongst the tribes, drastically contributing to the deforestation, the devouring of the wood resources. Drastic deforestation may have come as a result of year-on-year exploitation of the power of the Birdman. All this history, all these events, gazed upon by the Moai, resting in paradise for thousands of years. Many have concluded that Easter Island has only been inhabited for about 1500 years, yet we know nothing of how they moved the statues. Erosion is clearly from centuries if not millennia of exposure, most buried under meters of earth, as if buried under ancient sediment. When these statues were eventually discovered to be full-bodied, not just heads, and excavated successfully, the lower portions protected from the elements, petroglyphs were discovered carved into their torsos of an as yet unknown language. It is officially believed the statues were carved from native rocks between 1250 and 1500. I tend to disagree. Beyond my suspicions, let me be clear and state the facts. We do not know for a certainty who made the statues, when they were made, what was carved onto them, and most importantly what they were made for. I believe their purpose was the same as they were fulfilling at the time of the island's modern discovery. They are a beacon of life, they are a sign of human activity on the island, a symbol of organization, ability, and power. Tuberculosis was officially recorded as killing many islanders after a Spanish slave raid upon it in the 1800s, but a population crash was recorded between the second visit from Europeans to the island and subsequent visits. Several tribesmen were shot dead with firearms in a mistaken confrontation during one of these initial landings, ultimately compromising an attempt to count the population. As would be suspected, not ever seeing such modern firepower, or indeed modern anything, most natives went into hiding during the visit. Statue toppling was then recorded on subsequent landings, as if the islanders did not want the statues to be seen from off-coast. This amazing island, this utterly remote paradise, that became the home to lost souls, their children and their children's children. Or the thankful sunsets in Nirvana, the love, the anger, the emotional stories of the amazing people and their generations. The story this magical island allowed to be made, unfortunately had a sad ending. Due to early Christian missionary campaigns to the island, most of their priceless culture, practices, and especially their valuable knowledge of successfully living completely isolated on a tiny desert island, vanished forever over time. Subsequent slave raids demolished the island as imaginary barrier to the forgotten sorrow of outside memories, built up over generations of safety and solitude. The pace and ferociousness of the modern world swept them up in an angry wave. It seems that at this time in history, with most of the world partaking in the slave trade, the mystical untouched land of Easter's luck was to run out. The last king to ever live like a god among his people and reign over the kingdom of Easter died a slave, along with his family somewhere in Europe. A sad end to an amazing legacy. Or is it an end? When I first considered covering Easter Island, I looked upon the subject as somewhat bland and boring, but once you peel back the moss, dig out the facts, you stumble across an amazing and true legend among historical tales. By participating in the research of past cultures, we can do their amazing legacies a justifiable service. There are many amazing things our ancestors are willing to tell us, if we are willing to look hard enough. As always, thanks for watching.